The point I will make here is that any function for a particular organization should not be imposed.
When you're in the middle of transformation, delivery is paramount. It's everything.
Everybody wants to go digital. Everybody wanted to transform themselves, right?
The technologies can be used to make the PMO more digital friendly.
So they're either doing delivery, or they're doing reporting to the C-suite, or they're the cops. Hi Abid, welcome back. It's really good to have you back with us. I've been following your stuff. Apparently you've written a third book on PMO Delivery. Really good stuff. In fact, one of the first things I read in here that really blew me away was this interesting statistic from Boston Consulting Group. Apparently 70% of companies are unable to complete digital transformation like the way they intend to, or deliver the way they intend to. What's that about? And isn't that a bit of a frightening thing in this day and age where everyone's trying to do digital transformation?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I think it's a pleasure being back again with yourself. Yes, it is a worrying stats, but it's not surprising because if we look at the connection between strategy and execution, most companies, they get strategy right, but when it comes to execution or delivery or transformation or PMO type of activities, this is where they do quite badly. So yes, I mean, those stats are from BCG, and they're quite open and well known within industry.
So based on your experience, because what I've seen in reality, right, specifically if you segregate the organizations like startups versus mature organizations, right? What do you think if a PMO suits at a startup, for example? Because from my perspective, most of the startups I've seen, they are smaller organizations focused mainly on the delivery of their initial products, right? So the executive suite, usually the CXOs, they belong from that industry or from the specialized fields, and they do not care about the execution based on the PMO. You have any experience on that? Because if you compare with the mature organizations, right, corporates, where I think PMO is more essential and works in a much better manner, actually.
I mean, the point I will make here is that any function for a particular organization should not be imposed.
Right.
It must be met organically. There must be a need for a PMO, or there must be a need for a business development. There must be a need for a department. Those departments should not exist unless there's a need. This is my underlying philosophy. So yes, in some organizations, startups, you may have a CEO that needs a PMO because it's really a complicated product or service that they want to launch. And typically the PMO, it functions as a launch office.
Correct.
So when the product or service is launched, things settle down, they begin to operationalize. At that particular point, a transition from a launch office to a PMO can actually take place. So it depends from circumstances to circumstance, from company to company. But PMOs should not be imposed. That's why I use the expression a fashion accessory. Just because other companies have it, we should have it. This is not the right way to go about.
So based on the industries, basically, right?
Adopting a PMO.
Right. Okay.
So in this post-pandemic age where everyone has transformed to some degree, some people are still in the process of transforming, or you have a long way to go. But that's just alarming. I mean, does that mean that most companies will fail to deliver now? How's that going to happen? And it's really confusing.
I think we need to take a step back and really look at what companies are trying to do. So you find that companies are trying to do one of two things or both, which is either they want to sell digital services and products, or they want to become digital. Now, if you want to sell and you want to become digital internally, that requires a lot of changes in terms of the processes, in terms of the performance metrics in terms of the organization. So all of these aspects that have to change, and the PMO is actually a pivotal part of that.
That's and that's something that's yet to really wrap my brain around, because it seems like whoever I ask, I get different answers. It's not like a lot of consistency across, well, the people that I've spoken to about this. So as I said, when you're in the middle of transformation, delivery is paramount. It's everything. And PMO is often cited as a solution to this problem. Now, when I go and ask people, all right, so how do you implement your PMO in your organization? I get all sorts of answers. I'll get some guys will say, you need an enterprise PMO, or like a standalone sort of monolith, independent function within the organization that sort of manages this. And then I'll ask others, and I'll say, no, that's totally the wrong way of going about it. You need to have, each function should have its own sort of PMO center within that function. So marketing has their own, engineering has their own, et cetera. So how do you explain this disparity?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very important point, because what you've described, whether it's a centralized PMO, distributed PMOs, or a corporate or executive PMOs, it's really the PMO identity. What is it that the PMO is about? I mean, why does it exist? What is the purpose? What is the mission? And I think those questions are really fundamental. So organizations that want to set up a PMO, where it should reside, how many there should be, they need to ask the question, why do they want a PMO in the first place?
To get the job done, maybe?
That could be the case, but I think a lot of C-suite, they don't really look in depth when they want to establish a PMO. They don't take the proper measures to understand what the executives they want. So the CEO says, look, I've launched a company and I launched it with a PMO. I need a PMO. It becomes like a fashion accessory.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas a proper organization would probably survey the C-suite, understand what the expectations are, understand what they want, understand what type of PMO is required to actually aid in terms of the execution of the strategy. And also whether maybe the PMO should be sitting at the corporate level, whether it should be sitting at the departmental level, whether PMO services, some of them should be outsourced to maybe offshore, the level of, let's say, digitalization within the PMO. So all of this becomes part of the PMO's identity or PMO's strategy.
So are all of these things okay? Is it okay are you saying that one is not better than the other? That both of these sort of, what would you call them?
Let's say that they are basically models and templates, but it's not one size fits all. Every organization is unique. It has a unique fabric that is made out of its interaction between the employees, the customers, the clients. So it's important to understand how the PMO is actually going to fit in that organization, and then go about constructing the PMO. So this is the first starting point. So my advice would be for many organizations who want to set up a PMO, but more importantly, those that have a PMO, maybe it's worth having a survey done with the C-suite to determine what the PMO should be doing.
That's like a fundamental point. Thanks for bringing that up. Because again, this is linked to the whole structure discussion and the purpose discussion. Why do we have a PMO? What does a PMO do? Just give you an example of some of the things that I've heard. They should be doing delivery. They should be reporting to the C-suite. Now, this is generally what people would say individually, right? These are mutually exclusive in some organizations. So they're either doing delivery, or they're doing reporting to the C-suite, or they're the cops. They're just sitting there, enforcing. Some are mentoring other departments on how to get the job done, or some are just there to manage the portfolio. So, well, what's the deal with that? Is that again a case of one size doesn't fit all, and that every organization should pick and choose to sort
Absolutely. But what tends to happen once the PMO has been set up, it will really have a single identity. So, for example, most executives will see a PMO as just as a dog's body, that you just need to chase around, go and get the status, get the updates, aggregate, and just present. Others will actually say, no, I want you to do more. I actually want you to go and deliver projects and programs for me, because I believe that you are integral to delivery. Others will say, no, you just work for the CEO. You're the extension of his sensory perception. So you are just going to keep an eye out on what's happening within the organization and report exclusively to the CEO. So what I'm saying is none of this is incorrect. However, the best type of PMO is the one that serves the C-suite in all of its expectations. So you may have a hybrid PMO that does exactly this. It could do reporting and dog's body work, like a secretary. It could do that. That could be one service that could be offered. It could actually do the delivery of key flagship projects and programs that are essential for the company. It could do that. It could also do portfolio management, especially if you have a board that you want to report at a higher level, where you want different strategy drivers driving all the initiatives within the organization. So it could be subscription-based growth, regulatory, revenue, segmentation. So these are like different drivers that you want to have, and all of the projects or the initiatives within the company are grouped accordingly. So it could be any one or all. The point here is that in order for the C-suite to empower the PMO fully, the PMO must serve the C-suite their wishes. What is it that they want? So I would advocate that the PMO should be performing all of these functions for the C-suite.
So there's a lot of tugging, pushing and pulling and stepping over people and a lot of politics, let's say, in organizations. I have an opinion that sometimes PMO will come in and disrupt that political imbalance further by adding further political intrigue. Is that just me and my experience with poor PMO implementation?
No, actually, I think you've asked a great question. What does the P in the PMO stand for? Right? Is it perfume, right? Or is it project? Is it program? Is it portfolio? In my book, fundamentally speaking, is politics.
Politics, right.
Politics, because every organization will have politics. And in some organizations, the politics are quite intense, so there's friction between different departments. So the PMO needs to be apt. If the PMO is going to survive, if the PMO needs to have longevity, if the PMO is going to be there for the foreseeable future, the PMO needs to learn how to play politics. And here I would talk about maybe 2-3 important ingredients. First of all, people who are part of the PMO, they need to understand the political structure within the organization, the power dynamics.
Well, they're coming from like the head politic, aren't they? I mean, if they're, like we used to call them the cops, they're basically there spying on us on behalf of the CEO. And that's a bit of a piece.
Yeah, but I've been there, right? So honestly, I have a bit different opinion, right? Because if PMO gets into politics, right, that means more or less they're getting into the red tape mechanism, right, which would hinder the delivery side as well, right? Because right now the objective of the PMOs or the PMs basically is to have a smoother delivery within the scope and whatnot, right? And once you get into the P part of politics, right, I think that might, impact the delivery.
I would actually disagree, because you can't separate politics from the delivery side of things. There's no such thing as being apolitical, although the political correctness that is taught within most organizations is that you need to be apolitical, and it doesn't really work when it comes to the PMO. I'll give you a simple example. In any C-suite, you're going to have heavyweights and you're going to have lightweights. So you may have a CFO heavyweight, you may have the CIO lightweight, doesn't have a lot of credibility, is not really respected in the organization, and you have the CEO who's a heavyweight. So in those type of organizations, obviously, the PMO needs to get things done, and the PMO cannot afford to be aligning with the most powerful stakeholders or the most powerful actors, because that would be detrimental. The PMO has to make sure that whatever projects are being delivered, those interests for those projects are protected. So the only way to do that is to make sure that all the different actors, all the stakeholders, they are aligned. So you have to smooth relations between the different departments, and that means politics, right?
Smoothing, I agree, but showing the muscles politically, I was taking it that way basically because
this carrot and stick, man. Sometimes you've got to offer you that's politics. The decision to use a carrot and the stick is like, in which case do you do that? Like, so for example, with you, it's it's carrots, man. It's always carrots. But maybe for me, that you might think that maybe I need to threaten him into getting.
So let me go back to the same example. So you have in an organization, you have the CIO who's quite weak, you have the CFO who's quite strong, and you have let's say the commercial person who actually wants that system delivered. So for example, if I am a chief commercial officer and I want a billing system delivered, and I need to make sure that we help the CIO to deliver the billing system, but the CFO is not signing off, and there's no legitimate excuse why he's not signing off, then the commercial officer, together perhaps with the PMO and the CIO, they have to coalesce and form a coalition to work against the CFO in such a manner to make sure that he actually signs off on this, so the system is actually delivered for the betterment of the company. Right?
Right.
So here, I'm not saying one is picking sides because sides have to be picked. One needs to pick sides to make sure that the project objectives are actually met, because they are going to make the corporation perform in a much more efficient way.
Right. But you're talking about mostly like the internal projects, right? In this case specifically, right? But what happens when it goes for the external stakeholders? Let's suppose you're on the vendor side. You're supposed to deliver projects, right? We do have these issues, right, in our organizations where we sign off on something different, right? And of course, and we are spending a lot of resources, money and time to deliver that part. Where is that point where you are supposed to say yes and no on the, scoping part, for example, right? Now, those are some internal politics. Like, for example, me being a person from the commercial side right now, I always say, because I'm the customer's voice inside the company, right? Inside MMM, for example, right? So I'm always favoring the customer, right? However, let's suppose Kash or our developers, right? They said, guys, you promised us X number of mandates. Now you're asking 10 more. FOC, for example, so that's more like internal politics in a way, right? Which you have to overcome somehow. So how do you tackle that part of it? To have a smoother relationship with the customers and...
It really depends from situation to situation. Look, the other thing that I mentioned in my book is that you don't want to win every battle. You actually want to win the war. Right? So you need to be careful about picking your fights, because if you pick a fight that can put the PMO and hurt the PMO's reputation on a permanent basis, then that's going to be detrimental for the longevity of the PMO. So it's important to pick the right fights. So whether those fights are internally within the organization or externally within the client's organization, because you still find there are a hierarchical distribution of power amongst different departments. Some have more weight than the others, and you have to get along with different people. And I mean, this is life. This is the dynamics of organizational politics that we have to work with. So whether you are a vendor or whether you're working internally to deliver internally projects or programs for the betterment of the company, you have to make sure that organizational politics is played in the best possible way to ensure that the interest of the company is protected, not of a particular department.
Right.
So I mean, that's the axiom that I would use.
I think that effective tracking and reporting done right also helps in bringing the temperatures down and helping people to sort of self-motivate themselves into doing what they need to do. clearly, if everyone and my auntie can see exactly what's going on on the project, you don't need to go point fingers at everyone. You can see it's like black and white. I think, and that fosters a really healthy sort of delivery-oriented culture where it's not a personal matter anymore, and it's really about getting the thing over the line or over the wall, or whatever you're supposed to be doing. So
yes, I mean, there is good point. I mean, one of the facets of actually politics is actually communication, and communication around facts and figures. But sometimes you find that even the C-suite doesn't have the confidence to actually pull the trigger. So as a PMO, you then have to load the gun with the right information and encourage the CEO or the CFO or whoever the project sponsor is to actually fire the gun to make sure that the project is actually delivered, it's on track, it's according to specification, etc., etc. So it really depends. I mean, politics is actually vast, is inseparable from the workings of the PMO.
So should PMO in this case should accept or reject projects based on those factors, like political factors? Like, you know, there are some projects which are difficult or impossible to deliver, for example, based on some circumstances, right? Maybe budget or whatever might be there. So should every project should go through PMO, or the smaller projects shouldn't go through?
It really depends on how the PMO has been set up. What the sponsors of the PMO want. So if the C-suite wants the PMO to, let's say, validate every single project, then that's part of their mandate. Or it could be the other way around, that the most important overarching projects are given to the PMO. The PMO doesn't have a choice. So for example, let's say the whole organization now needs to move from legacy channels to digital channels or online channels. That means the whole organization will have to change. There's a lot of inertia, there's a lot of resistance. That's an extremely difficult project.
Right. Specifically for the transformation.
PMO needs to have the right empowerment plus the right support from the C-suite in order to step on people's toes, make difficult decisions, and then also ensure that the transformation and the user adoption takes place for the right, for moving away from legacy channels to digital channels.
Right.
So PMO is not old. I mean, I'm old-ish. And PMO has been around since pretty much I can remember in some sort of shape, form or other. So how is technology really helping PMO in a significant way? Or is it just like, they're using emails instead of sending memos now? Or is there actual technological advances that are helping the guys in PMO to get the job done?
Well, I mean, I think what I understand from your question, how relevant are PMOs in the digital age?
Yes,
so you've got blockchain, you've got AI, you've got machine learning, you've got computer vision, you've got these latest technologies that are coming, you've got robotic process automation. Can PMOs use these type of technologies to make them more relevant? Sure. I think there are many applications. I mean, the PMO, like any other function in a corporate organization, has processes that are manually intensive. For example, collection of data. Collection of data can take a lot of time. If it's taking too much time, therefore, it means that the analytical part or the analysis that needs to take place to make the information ready for the C-suite is being then jeopardized, or you don't have enough time. Here, you can probably use the likes of, for example, software robots to actually fetch the data from different systems, from different projects, get the financial data for the project, the resource data, the operational data, put it together in a Excel whereby the PMO particular person who's assigned to that project can spend more time extracting meaningful inferences.
I think you've got like a lot of data coming. I think then analytics and sort of predictive modeling and sort of things could happen too, surely.
Sure. So I just given one example, which is you can use robots to actually fetch the data. The other is that most organizations, when they have a PMO function, the PMO function is actually quite repetitive in terms of its delivery. So for example, if you have a customer facing PMO, a professional services PMO, which is delivering the same projects again and again because you have the same set of products, right? Or even the bespoke nature of the product is such that you are following a set path. On that basis, you can actually use machine learning to find out or predict in advance. Perhaps you need resources at a certain point, which you can't foresee. But because based on the historical data, because many of the projects are very similar, you can say, well, at this particular point in time of the project, more resources are required for this reason, right? So yes, you can use machine learning. Or if you really want to move into, let's say, the 21st century, you can have, let's say, for large projects and programs, a lot of project managers or program managers, they want templates. So rather than going to a repository, you can have a chatbot they can converse with, and that can help them find the template, set up, for example, a resourcing template or logs or RAID logs, risk issues, assumptions, dependency logs, those type of things. Yes, you can use chatbots. So the technologies can be used to make the PMO more digital friendly in today's environment.
Excellent.
So I'd like to bring up one topic, basically the traditional way of PMO or project management to the new world PMOs, right? I think if we talk about 20 years back when I used to work as a project manager, my project plan was really big, huge, with a lot of work breakdown structures, and then the risk management part, issue management, and all that. I think one of the things which we have learned from this pandemic is the transformation, the actual essence of transformation. Please correct me if I'm wrong. For example, the digitalization started, from 2000, right? Everybody wants to go digital. Everybody wanted to transform themselves, right, in a digital manner. However, what do you think, what was the actual impact of this digitalization during the pandemic? Because even before that, because we had so many face-to-face meetings and whatnot, right? One of the things which we missed out, and I'd like to share my experience, but I'd like to ask at the same time, what was your, say on the gap?
What I would say is, I think from what I trying to understand is PMOs are probably the only function that is in the best position to lead transformation, especially digital transformation. And the reason I sort of stick by this is that PMOs have two major ingredients. They are very good at coordination, and they have very good relationships with most of the departments. So if you're going to do a digital transformation that impacts the whole organizations, so the PMOs are at the cornerstone of this, and they should lead this activity, in my opinion.
But what about in terms of the requirements? Do you think every single department need to be digitized or transformed from that?
It is inevitable. I mean, if you are going to, let's say, sell digital solutions and products, you have to then also make sure that internally your processes, they undergo digitalization. And so the support functions, operations, technology functions, they all have to change. If they don't change, you cannot have the situation where you have outwardly you appear to be digital, but inwardly you're living as an immigrant in the digital world. And what I mean by that, people are happy to be living in the analog world.
But what about the acceptance in that? Yes, I completely understand. But the biggest resistance I've seen for this transformation part is the resistance, internally and externally. Whenever you tell something.
No, but you have to understand, this guy, he's like a bit of a gadget geek, right? He really wants the entire office to be sitting there with VR headsets on.
Not all of them.
And never go out of the office, never see the sun, all that stuff. No cooler talks. Nah. This guy, he wants the entire office in VR headsets.
No, honestly, yes, I have given examples for the VR, for
Very
example,
often.
if you want to talk, right? Because honestly, like for example, if you take Meta, Google, Apple, right, Microsoft, they're spending a lot on augmented reality and virtual reality, mixed reality, right? And I'm pretty sure like it's expensive right now, but it wouldn't be expensive like after 5 or 10 years, right? To adopt. It's the adaptation rate as well, right? You cannot adopt instantly. How many people have actually seen Oculus in action?
So I think this is a good point that you're raising. See, PMOs are renowned for being very good at, let's say, transformation and project management. But PMOs are also very good at change management. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to change people's behavior by introducing new technologies, you need to make sure that the proper incentives are provided in order to encourage employees to change. If no one's going to go online, then what's the point in investing millions on online channels? If your customers are not going to go there, and if the employees are not going to support those online channels, then that's a huge waste of time.
It has to be about user experience. Like the technology and the methods and whatever, analog or digital or mixture of both, it should totally be down to what sort of CX you really need to get the job done correctly. Like all the way from collecting data through to what you're going to do with it later on.
Right. But, so when it comes to transformation, the biggest challenge I've seen is the, single point of data collection. Unfortunately, in a lot of organizations, the data resides, in smaller or bigger islands, right? And this is the challenge I've seen. Even in a smaller or a bigger organization, the information is not centralized. Even if it's centralized, you don't have the access to it, right? And a lot of times, even from the product management perspective or the delivery perspective, right? This is what I've seen. I think this is one of the things which, people need to overcome. I understand data is the king these days, right? It's all about data these days. But at the same time, from the PMO perspective or the product management perspective, right? We need to centralize data. Again, most of the data is confidential, but not all of the data is confidential.
I agree. I mean, I don't dispute this point. And I think if you're going to have a PMO leading, let's say, transformation initiatives, as part of, let's say, the working environment for the project or program, one is to then set up different work streams. And these work streams, they should be dedicated, maybe one for process, one for automation, one for data, to make sure that for that particular project, there is a unified or a uniform source of point of truth. You don't have multiple points of truth. So that is something that the PMOs are very good at doing when they want to set up, let's say, a project or a program organization to deliver that particular initiative.
Right. Because, in most of the organizations, specifically in telcos, the BI as a department resides within the commercial department, right? And unfortunately, getting all the data out of BI is not that easy, right? And I personally think, this is just my suggestion, the data should also reside within, PMO, because apparently when any project or program goes into operations, right, PMO is the only body which actually holds the history of that project.
I think you are touching upon a very good point. For my philosophy, because PMOs are cross-functional in the way that they work and in the way that they carry out their function, it's important that some of these cross-functional, let's say, activities also reside with them. One could be analytics. Another could be, like I mentioned before, change management. The other could be processes. Another could be, let's say, quality management.
You also talk about strategy, as how strategy should ultimately...
Oh, yes. I mean, that's in a different context. I mean, that's in the context where there is, let's say, recession happening and organizations, they want to become frugal. So they...
But then you say that eventually PMO should start adopting or absorbing, I think is the word that you used, which is,
Well, I mean, it's to be killed or either you kill the competition, or you are killed, right?
Right.
So rather than being a passive PMO and waiting for the axe to drop and losing your resources, and if you're a corporate PMO just being demoted from the C-suite and put somewhere else, I mean, that's a fate that you can accept. Or a proactive approach will be to say, okay, we have a change management activity that HR is doing, doesn't do it very, very well, because they don't have very good relations with the organization. We have a strategy function, and a lot of the strategy activities the PMO could actually do better. So for example, portfolio management, corporate performance, because again, the two qualities that the PMO exhibits or displays is that it has very good relations with different departments and is very good at coordinating to make the experience frictionless. So given this, one can take strategy activities, one can take HR activities, and yes, one should be bold. I mean, the traditional PMO theory is theory, and there's a lot that can happen. For example, you may want your PMO to have extra credibility. How would you do that? You can have external partnerships. You can have a partnership with a knowledge body. So for example, Gartner, Ovum, they can provide knowledge, industry trends on PMO, on delivery, on best practices in these areas. The PMO should go ahead and actually sign up those partnerships. You can have industry partnerships. So if you're in a telco environment and you're a telecoms PMO, there's nothing preventing you from having industry vendor-related partnerships where you can bring best practice PMO activities to enhance your own capability. And the last one is that you can have the latest, let's say, leading edge activities from universities. Universities are always performing PhDs on project management.
What about PMI? Does PMI still have a role to play here, or are they?
Yeah, I mean, PMI from a standards body, you can have another partnership. All I'm saying is that it's up to you to add new capabilities to your PMO function, at the same time to be brave enough to step out of the traditional mindset and form those partnerships. So you have those capabilities.
This is beginning to sound like a hostile internal takeover of the company.
It can happen, and it should be encouraged.
It should be encouraged. Okay.
It's yes and no for it. Basically, sometimes, I mean, again, PMO shouldn't become a bottleneck. That's what I think.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Yeah.
So, of course, when you talk about project delivery specifically, right, it's all about communication. I think 80%, right? This is because PMs, not all of the PMs are subject matter experts, right? They are good in communication. They are good in bringing people together, right? They are good in making connections, right? Good in making understanding. So they are jack of all, I think.
Well, I think you have eloquently described what leadership is. The most important task or function of a corporate PMO, distributed PMO, a customer-facing PMO is leadership.
Absolutely.
And leadership solely is lacking in most organizations because of a variety of factors, which I don't want to touch upon today. But leadership is missing in many areas. And this is where the PMO can easily step in and exert leadership.
Right. So how do you, now coming back to transformation, right? Like PMO would help for sure in transformation, but what about the transformation of PMO itself to digitalization, right? Like you mentioned earlier, right? In terms of using those bots, using AIs and whatnot, right? But what kind of use cases you think are more appropriate for PMOs, to adopt? Because what I've seen right now, of course, I haven't used it yet, but I think the lowest hanging fruit is the risk management.
Are you yourself a PMO professional?
Yes,
Right.
was at least.
Used to be.
Used to.
Right.
No, claims he used to be.
Okay, so you know one of the most frustrating things for your clients is to fill in templates, whether it's for risks.
Right.
I always found that the most annoying part.
I mean, it's tedious for them. Now, if you can robotize that, you're going to add value straight away.
No, I like the
if you
idea
can
of
make
having
it
a
easier
conversation
for
face.
your colleagues in other departments who have to basically provide the status report so that you can aggregate, if you can make all of this easier, you're going to add value straight away,
That's right.
right?